This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neal Kieran.
Welcome to Analysis in Chains by CryptoNews.com, your daily source of all things crypto. Hi, Neal. How's it going in Montreal?
All's good, Nathan. All's good. The heat wave has just passed us by. It was quite intense, starting to cool off a bit like crypto markets at the moment. Looking forward to go
Crypto
outside.
cooling off. Oh no. Didn't we just not 5 days ago say how it was heating up again and we're so excited?
Well, yeah, long term, yeah, I'm excited. And as we have been saying, fundamentally, everything looks good. We know there's so much investment going on in terms of projects in the crypto world. But sometimes people use Bitcoin as a proxy for how things are going. And when things are going down, it's the end of the world. And when things are going up, we're upon a revolution in finance. Bigger picture, it's in my view, it's still blockchain, crypto, the whole lot's still going up. But it's when you're on YouTube looking for some videos to entertain you before you go to bed, they just go with the price, and so the sentiment's a bit negative at the moment.
Well, the Bitcoin price and the whole crypto market is a little bit like the weather in Newfoundland. If you don't like it, wait 5 minutes. Now, it was interesting because we were talking, Neal, before the show about this Bloomberg article that we were reading saying that the corporate sentiment to crypto may be cooling off. And I think this warrants a little more scrutiny because, the retail investors, the investment market in general is subject to all sorts of forces, news of the day. But crypto and blockchain investment by corporates is much more long-term. And so I'm wondering, do you think that there's cause for concern?
I wouldn't see it as a cause for concern at all. I'm more the view that corporations, and in this case, the article talked about Microsoft and IBM. I think they're kind of missing the point by pulling back. The article points out that what's quite difficult is that you have these companies trying to bring out their own blockchain platforms. But that's quite difficult when you're trying to work with competitors and everyone's trying to bring out their own platforms, and then nothing really becomes adopted. The thing about blockchain and decentralization, it's all about collaboration. And it's all about working with your competitors. It's working with people on the supply chain to try and add value to the services you're bringing. Being the guy that has the platform that everyone wants, you're kind of missing the picture if that's your main aim. Okay, we're like IBM, we're going to have this blockchain platform and all the corporations in the world are going to use it and we're going to be rich. Like that's the wrong way of going about it. You have to think of it as, okay, we're going to be applying blockchain technology to help develop trust and improve collaboration, and that in turns develop value. If we look at blockchain, in my view, like marketing, people and companies put a lot of emphasis on brand equity. Well, what does this brand say to you? Well, I think corporations need to start developing trust equity and start looking at blockchain as a means to develop trust, to enhance value in the services and in their brand. And the thing is, by going with the approach of trying to build a platform that everyone's using is the wrong way. You have to be looking at ways of developing systems with other competitors and people in your supply chain. So you're all in it together. You're all adding value together as opposed to being in competition to try and take market share and make as much money as possible. I think so. That's where I think they're missing the point, and that's where in the crypto world it's all about collaboration. Especially if you look at Ethereum. You have the Ethereum blockchain, and so many projects are building on top of it because they're trying to improve the experience of using Ethereum. And what we could actually see in the long run, and I've been tracking some of these companies that build on top of Ethereum, their tokens are becoming more valuable over time than Ethereum tokens. So it goes to show that Ethereum being the central blockchain doesn't mean it's going to win out and become the most valuable. It's all about having the a valuable ecosystem that works for everyone else. And so that's where I think IBM and the likes are probably missing out, because they're kind of missing the point here.
I think there's a lot to unpack with the crypto market, but I really want to start with the fact that the average person doesn't understand blockchain at all, and the average corporate person has heard of blockchain and maybe understands a little bit, but they're not experts because it's a very complex subject. So how do you understand this new technology? Well, you relate it to old technologies. And so people will attempt to sell you these new technologies in the same way as the old technologies. So they'll sell it like enterprise software. People will come around and they'll say, well, hey, look, we've got a blockchain. Buy my blockchain. We're Hyperledger. We'll build you your own thing on a blockchain. It'll be private. It'll be permissioned. It will slice and dice and make julienne fries. And and the challenge is, well, first of all, finding an actual use case. And this is non-trivial, because many of the use cases are limited by technology. Okay, so if you're doing something where you're trying to bring in millions of customers to purchase using crypto or something like that, then you run into throughput problems with your 7 transactions a second that you can do on maximum. If you are doing something where you are decentralizing something that has previously been centralized, this can also be a problem, because these are corporates that make their money by being a centralized entity. Everyone looks to them as the central source of whatever service. So there may be a conflict of motivations there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're completely on point.
And when you go a little further and say, well, we really want to have a blockchain solution to help with collaboration, to bring multiple entities that don't trust each other together, well, you have problems there too. And one of them can be that everyone wants to be the one who has the solution that everyone else uses, right? You have not invented here syndrome. And it's not just the big corporates that have this. It's the little guys too, right? So how many blockchain protocols for computer games do we need? One, but everyone wants to do their own. Why do they want to do their own? Because then they can do an ICO. And if they do an ICO, they can raise 20, 30, 40 million dollars overnight. And so even though maybe there's no specific business model behind the tokens or the infrastructure itself, everyone still wants to run the infrastructure so that they can do an ICO, right? And I guess, and I understand this. This is a very common mentality. It's a very understandable mentality. But one thing I think the industry needs to get away from is the concept of making profit on infrastructure. I mean, I think of it like this, Neil, and when you have old school infrastructure like roads and bridges, who makes money on that? It's very difficult. You can put maybe a toll or something like that, but that's a challenge. So usually something that's infrastructure that's for the common good, people don't want to pay for that directly, so you pay for it through your taxes, and it's run by the government. Or maybe you have things like the phone line, where it does make sense, people will pay for it, but because it's infrastructure, everyone is required to use it. And you don't want to have 500 different companies laying down cable and digging up the roads, so you have a mandated monopoly with very strict regulations over what you can charge. When the internet came along, that was new infrastructure. And some people, out of the goodness of their heart, the Tim Berners-Lees of the world, who made money on the protocol? Nobody, really. It was created, and telecom companies used it, and service providers set up to make money using the protocol, but the protocol itself didn't make money. You can have non-profit foundations where different people donate to them and they run infrastructure. But now what we're seeing with blockchain is a new way of funding infrastructure. With Ethereum, for example, having the Ethereum Foundation, they do an ICO, they put $40 million in the bank account, and then the $1 million a month interest they get off of it runs and pays for the infrastructure that everybody uses. At least it runs the development of it. The infrastructure running pays for itself with the incentives of the tokens, right? And so this is a very interesting thing, but can you imagine if the telephone line was unregulated in what fees it could charge? You would end up having a breakdown of the infrastructure where only certain people could use it, where the outcome would be very frustrating to the growth of a market that built on top of it, right? So when we think of internet companies, we think of all of the companies that built on top of this protocol of this internet. And that's why this whole concept of net neutrality and of a free and open infrastructure are important. So I think that this is something that corporates and startups alike have to come to with blockchain, is just this recognition that we are attempting to build infrastructure. And yes, we do have a new way of funding it. But in the end, it's infrastructure, and everyone expects you to build on their infrastructure. And we have to move into that mentality where I'm going to make my money by building a business that runs on X infrastructure. But we're not there yet. I mean, look, EOS, what are they doing? They're giving $500,000 to projects that build on EOS just so that they can say, look, people are building on me. Because no one wants to build on someone else's infrastructure because they can just run their own ICO and make $40 million instead of having to go through this painful fundraising process of the old school startups.
Yeah, well, I think that was an awesome course in Nathan Williams' ICO degree.
I've been thinking a lot about this, Neil. I've been thinking a lot about this. We're seeing it a lot, and just so many ICOs are just trying to be the next infrastructure when there's an infrastructure already there, or maybe I don't know. It's not like we've solved all the problems with the infrastructure, though. It's not there's a winner yet. So I don't know.
You're completely right, though. You hit the nail on the head. Like, trying to be the infrastructure, block one. Too many people are trying to chase the same game and not realizing what's the bigger picture here. What is really, what are we trying to build? What are we trying to improve upon? And going back to your point about infrastructure that's out there, it's in terms of costs and payments, we live in a very subscribed world where it's, hey, you want Netflix, you want Amazon, whatever, we're just paying subscription to these very few entities that effectively own the internet. And it kind of, it makes it harder for anyone to build anything, to build any sort of solution anymore. And as a user of the internet, it's I'm becoming more frustrated because I feel like there's no more innovation anymore. Whereas with blockchain as a whole, it's going back to your point on new thinking, new ways of funding. It's very, very important to have these new ways, because I feel that we've become so stuck. But by having these ICOs and new projects and new protocols that builds upon new infrastructure, we're going to be having a more decentralized internet that I think is a lot more fair to everyone. And it's, we can all be part of it and we can all gain from it as well. Whereas as opposed to, well, sometimes I feel like Amazon, Netflix, and Facebook are just leeching us. We all love using the internet. We like the freedoms it brings, but I feel like, hey, you're taking my data, you're making money from it. Hey,
that's the other way of paying for infrastructure that I didn't even touch on, which is the predominant way now.
Yeah,
is okay, well, you don't want to pay for the product, so you're the product, and we're going to sell you. Which is, it feels, I guess it's sort of fair as long as I don't have to think or see it or whatever. But then you realize, wait, I don't like the fact that you're selling me out to say, interest groups, or maybe it's not just advertising that I'm getting. Maybe it's targeted propaganda, or yeah, personal data is not always a good way of paying for this stuff.
So yeah, like, going back to the article and what it was telling us, I think it's easy to see why it's hard for IBM and Microsoft to sort of really grasp what blockchain is about. And if anything, it's coming from a world of frustration of where internet is today, and as a user what we have to go through. And so a new way has been developed to fund the development of blockchain, and with, I guess, the user really at the core, in terms of privacy, but also innovation as well, because I do feel like innovation is getting stifled by all these big tech giants. So, and whenever I see these articles, whenever I see corporations give up on blockchain, it actually makes me think that blockchain is winning, and all of these decentralized systems. And I keep hearing more about ICO funding is still increasing, and I think yesterday we saw Galaxy Holdings, which is like a big holding group, a funding group that has invested in various blockchain projects, that went on the Toronto Stock Exchange on the venture side of things yesterday. It really goes to show, like, at the core, it's all developing. The investment has been there, and similar to how the internet took off, and like Walmart and the likes, and music companies kind of missed the boat. I kind of feel that a lot of the tech companies of today could miss the boat because they're so stuck on their subscription models that they're going to be missing out in this blockchain world and what it's trying to develop for users.
I think one of the big challenges that we're going to see with corporate adoption is this challenge of understanding how to adopt, right? Because if you've got people telling you, buy our private permissioned blockchain corporate solution that will build directly specifically for you, well, it's going to, unless you really know what you're about, you're not going to be able to see, does this actually solve a problem? Whereas a lot of the really innovative blockchain stuff is decentralized, so they're not going to necessarily have as much of an ability to go in and with salespeople like enterprise software, right? I mean, maybe, but we haven't seen it yet, and making the case for capturing value is harder, and so it's a challenge. And the reason I feel passionately about this, Neal, is that I'm seeing it in supply chain, which is a huge opportunity to onboard corporates. But imagine that you've got 100 people in your small mini supply chain, and each one of them is using a different customized private permission blockchain solution. Well, none of them would talk to each other. It's like having 100 different internets, and you couldn't email your grandma because she's using a different internet than you. So, until people really get the need for sort of corporate cooperative infrastructure, I think we're gonna see some difficulty in people wrapping their heads around it and getting actual business and the enterprise adoption.
Yeah, it's a new mentality, and it could take time. But I'm optimistic on the long run. But I think that we're going to see these type of articles come out where the big tech giants and the household names are going to be getting out blockchain because they don't see the point of it. But I think we're on a course that's going to be very hard to change with blockchain.
What about you at home listening in? What do you think? Did we get this right? Did we get this wrong? Write us at info@analysisinchains.com and let us know what you think. Neal, did you have any announcements for the rest of the week?
No major announcements. Just trying to survive, make sure I don't get skin cancer out there. That's it.
Okay. Well, have a great week, Neal, and keep on hashing. Thank you.